Evening. We wanted to raise the profile of the event this year, and I think we have the speakers to do just that. The most important thing about this evening is that we're hearing from the heart of the school, which is the students. Okay, so we're hearing a lot of things that students are thinking about and often don't get an opportunity to articulate. Tonight they can. Please show the respect of ditching the cell phones completely. They should be off, absolutely. You should not be messaging or communicating outside in any other way. I spoke to the grade 12s a week ago or so just about the role that an audience plays. As somebody who's done a lot of speaking, an audience really, you feed off an audience. And when you look out and they look kind of like this, it can be discouraging. So please don't be afraid to smile at your peers, okay? Because it gives them confidence and makes them feel like you want to hear what they have to say, okay? You're gonna see a bit of me tonight because as a way to increase the formality of this, I asked all students who are speaking to submit a short bio. So I'm gonna read those short bios in between. So it'll be a lot of clapping, but you can't get too much applause in the world for the efforts that you make. So be generous. We will begin. Oh, hang on, I have to knock on the door for Freddie so he knows when to start. This is the second time Victoria Saldat has been chosen to speak in front of an audience larger than about 30 people, and the last time was in grade 4. Today, she hopes to deliver the speech she should have given 8 years ago. She will talk about how expressions of freedom can come in many ways. Victoria Saldat.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to invite you to either close your eyes while I read or just listen carefully to what I have to say and try and connect these situations to your life. I believe in long car rides. Not the ones where you come back from work late at night, exhausted, prepared to swan dive into your bed, but the ones where you have somewhere to be, but you slow down because the drive feels so good. Even though you've been driving for 3 hours already and you still have 2 more hours ahead of you. The drives where the car isn't used to get to a destination, but to provide an experience. Slow drives allow us to pick the scenic route instead of the freeway. They allow us to see the potential and the beauty in our world. I believe in long car rides. Not the noisy family road trips that test your parents' patience, but the drives where it's so quiet that the only other noise comes from other cars whooshing past your window because you're in cruise control mode. The car rides where you turn down the stereo and listen to the world and your thoughts. Quiet drives make us appreciate all the little things we have in life. They show us that all the chaos of our lives are just an illusion to the real world. And if you dig deep, you can find the silence hidden in the cracks. I believe in long car rides. Not the GPS-navigated drives, but the ones you do solo, without any directions to follow, where you get so lost that you rely on the yellow line painted on the road to lead you someplace safe. The drives where your ankle starts throbbing from pushing on the gas for countless hours, where it's okay to eat gas station food, but just this once. Driving alone gives us a moment to let the music take over our souls and makes us feel young at the heart, no matter how old we are. I believe in long car rides. On long drives, you get a chance to completely disconnect from everything and everyone. You can be free. I don't mean the free as in, wow, I can go anywhere and do anything. I mean the beautiful kind of introverted freedom where you have an excuse to take brief moments to relax and ponder your thoughts. Free from other people interrupting you. Free from the pressure that society lays on us. Unlike a drive to the gas station where it feels like a task, A long drive, just as the sun is setting, allows us to connect with ourselves and just think. Whether a long drive means multiple days or a few hours, there will always be a sense of contentment and power. However, there can also be sadness. Sometimes, driving creates an environment where it's all right to let the tears stream out of your eyes and completely allow yourself to flow with the movements of the car. Not only does driving create a safe place for us to fully let go, but it also adds to our personal experience. Wherever the car takes you adds a new story to your life. It creates a new deja vu moment when you pass that tree on the side of the road with the odd branches. Personal experience is connected with reflecting about the past. Long drives allow us to think about everything in our lives that has led up to this moment, everywhere that our cars have taken us, and everywhere that we will go. Long car rides are what fill us with life. They are what separates us from each other and make us unique. Driving alone means there's no judgment. You can listen to the same Jason Derulo song 1,000 times and nobody can judge you. Anything that happens in the car stays between you and the vehicle. Long drives teach us that life can be cut short at the expense of one wrong turn. It shows us that there's always more places to discover and that it's okay to sing at the top of your lungs. I believe in long car rides. Thank you.
Gabrielle Owen grew up in the Cowichan Valley in a small family of 3, which includes her mother, Valerie, and her sister, Clarice. Despite being the soft one in the family, she has always admired her mother and sister for their unwavering strength and independence. She's grateful for their unconditional support. Gabrielle Owen.
When I was in elementary school, there was no greater embarrassment than scraping your knees or being stung by a bee and bursting into a puddle of tears. If one of these tragic events happened at recess on the playground in front of your whole grade, you were then forever labeled a crybaby. You were seen as one of the weak. Unfortunately, that was me. My physical and emotional pain tolerance was almost non-existent until about the age of 10, to the point where I still had to sit in the bathtub and hold the shower head over myself so I wouldn't accidentally get shampoo or even water in my eyes. I would seek out small corners to hide in and cry every time I upset literally anyone and was subsequently yelled at. I hated swimming in the ocean out of fear of getting salt in my eyes. I would rub my hands in gravel to coat them in a protective layer of dust before partaking in any jungle gym activity to avoid the pain of blisters. I would crumble under the sensory overload. Every feeling seemed to be amplified, the good and the bad. When my mom picked me up from school on days that I had yet another crying incident, I would ask her why so many people made fun of me. Her response was always, "It's all right, you're just sensitive, you'll toughen up eventually." I grew to resent the word with all of my being, anxiety coursing through my skinny, uncoordinated second grade body as I stepped onto the playground pavement in fear of falling, in fear of being reminded how sensitive I was. Every time I was caught trying to hide the tears, I was wiping away from my cheeks. I grew up believing that being sensitive was a terrible thing, that I should be embarrassed and ashamed of how inherently weak I appeared to be, especially next to a sister like mine. Many of you may know her or remember her reign here at Shawnigan. While my physical pain tolerance has improved somewhat with age, and I've learned to take many things with a grain of salt, no matter how much they sting, I still remain an emotional softie who struggles to keep it together in the face of small tragedies or the arrival of good news. While I've learned that my hypersensitivity to tone of voice, facial expressions, and body language is likely all thanks to ADHD, I've also come to believe that being sensitive is actually a good thing. Despite the teasing and constant waterworks, I've never struggled to be compassionate or caring towards anyone in need. Two things I was raised to believe are pillars of a kind, decent person. I have found it to be exceptionally helpful on days that my mother is too stressed out to acknowledge much of the world around her, when a friend or an entire house is going through a tough time but can't find the words to talk about it, or when my roommate is really not in the mood to be woken up at 2 a.m. by my erratic late-night study habits. I have never struggled to be empathetic, and I have never doubted my intuition. Being sensitive is comparable to being hyper-aware. Sure, I may be soft. I may cry more than your average girl, but being sensitive regularly allows me to see or understand things with ease that others will struggle to or never will. Being sensitive has allowed me to understand my own emotions in great depth, and while I might have an involuntary response of crying, I'm usually able to figure out whatever problem has arisen on my own not long after. Hypersensitivity sends me into random spirals of intense feeling that are, at times, quite inconvenient for myself and those around me, but it has also taught me the value of both sadness and joy. I notice the small things that my more nonchalant peers would pass right by. I experience things under a microscope and from behind a wide-angle camera at the same time. While being sensitive is widely seen as a negative trait and is highly associated with weakness or being overdramatic, I would have to disagree. I truly believe sensitivity is a blessing. Thank you.
Jillian Moore currently lives in Merritt, BC. Although Merritt is considered by some to be a hick town, Jillian nonetheless fancies the finer things in life, such as lipstick. Tonight, she will share with you her thoughts about self-expression through lipstick. Jillian Moore.
I believe in the power of lipstick. Something so simple, yet so expressive, that with a couple swipes across the lips, you're able to transform any look into magic. From my grandma to my mom, lipstick has been a staple item in their everyday lives. As my mom is fond of reminding me, a look is never completed until one has their favorite shade of heaven on. I always brushed those words away during my adolescent years because I was more worried about having the coolest lunch than scanning the internet for Kylie Cosmetics' not one, but two matte nude lip palettes. Because you know, a girl can never have enough of the same nude lipstick, convincing ourselves that this one will be different. It is only now that I've learned to appreciate the beauty of lipstick. The possibilities are endless, from deep fuchsia shimmer to periwinkle blue, or if you're in the mood, one of the 5 matted red lipsticks you invested in because, once again, you thought, surely this one will be different. If that does not overwhelm you, lipstick has evolved from its original formula. Now you have to make the life-changing decision about buying lip liners, lip gloss, liquid lipstick, and lip balms. If you're an amateur in this field, you're probably thinking, lip gloss and liquid lipstick are the same thing. Rookie mistake. If you think remembering the different types of lipsticks you can buy is challenging, try deciding which shade of pink will highlight your features and complement your Shawnigan polo, the best, while also ensuring you're on time for school. This takes us back to the good old days, grade 8. If you imagine you have just started high school. If being the youngest in a pool of seniors is not enough, being yourself can be an anchor when you're trying your best to stay afloat. As you begin to settle in and move up through the food chain, you begin to take risks and test boundaries. The best way to convince people of your new look is not only by the clothes you wear. Lipstick has been with me through the good and bad phases. From the skater girl days when the cool place to hang was the bike park, there all I needed was my shimmering clear lip gloss that would glow as I skated past my childhood crush. To the grungy days at the back of the schoolyard, where pink Wednesdays were replaced with loud boots, all black dress clothes, and of course, the trending shade of black lipstick to enhance your punk look just that one step further. As we were quick to retire these phases, lipstick was there for us through thick and thin, literally. Although they were great at the time, these phases made us realize that it is only ever acceptable to wear pink on Wednesdays. And when you come to that conclusion, the perfect shade, the perfect shade of pink will be waiting for you. We can transform ourselves into the latest trends or our favorite top chart artist, and we always know at the end of the night we can go home and just as fast as we put it on, convert back to the face God gave us. Wipe away the day with the swipe of a face cloth. As good as it can be to be somebody different for the day, or simply a different version of ourselves, it is reassuring that as we change and styles change, we can start fresh on our new canvas whenever the desire strikes. For the girls who think more is less, I say, go for it. Lipstick is all about expression and how many versions of you can be. Be the kind that is not afraid to stand up for others. Be the kind that runs for class president, or be the kind that wins a food eating contest, ringing in at 13 hot dogs. Just don't forget to put on your new long-last lip gloss along the way. I've grown up listening to the harmonizing words of my mother. The only person you can be is yourself. Those words have gotten me through the phases where I've thought I was not good enough or pretty enough for someone. As my remaining days as a high school student comes to an end, I realize that being you isn't always about pleasing others. I might not always be the smartest or the prettiest or good enough for everyone, but to be honest, who really is? I say, paint your canvas with the outrageous colors that no one dares to wear. Yellows, blues, and purples. Outline and fill in your lips with that cherry red that makes your teeth just that one shade whiter. The palette at Sephora is not your limit, because at the end of the day, tomorrow you can explore the MAC counter at Mayfair. Thank you.
Keigo Hachisuka was born in San Diego, California, to Japanese parents. Although he has not lived in Japan, he has visited almost every summer and proudly embraces his Japanese heritage. Keigo Hachisuka.
Every Saturday for 9 years, I spent 6 hours sitting in a classroom learning the Japanese curriculum. I was learning everything I learned in public school, but in Japanese. For me, these 9 years were torturous. While all my friends had an entire Saturday off, I would be sitting in a hard metal chair, my knees unwillingly touching the old gum stuck beneath the table. I am 100% Japanese, and I hated myself for it. I felt that my Japanese heritage was a curse, and looking back on it, this will be one of my biggest regrets. This all started in grade 1 when my mom packed me rice balls wrapped in seaweed. For me, this was an everyday meal, but for my fellow Caucasian students, it was strange. Although I can't say I got bullied for my food, I got a few ews and a lot of strange looks. This bothered me, and that very night, I asked my mom to make me sandwiches and the kind of food that my classmates brought. And from that day on, I had a sandwich for lunch every day. Later, in the same school year, Lunchables became a popular meal, and I too begged my mom for this. A plastic container with a few crackers and a piece of chocolate for dessert. Even for my 7-year-old self, this seemed unappetizing, but my desperate desire to fit in overpowered this feeling, and I consumed the processed lunch for weeks. Later on, I went back to the sandwiches, but I still avoided the traditional Japanese lunches. I was so desperate to fit in that I began to lose my identity. This continued to be the case until I met 2 of my closest friends to this day, Miles and Paris. Miles is Korean and Paris is Vietnamese, and they taught me to embrace my Japanese heritage. They wore their Asian pride with honor and did not care about what others thought. They brought traditional Asian fruits and meals to lunch and openly argued for their country. They were doing what I had avoided for all my life on a daily basis. Watching this, I realized the horrendous nature of what I had done to suppress my culture. After meeting Miles in Paris, I no longer felt the need to hide my Japanese culture, and I truly felt confident with my ethnicity. I was able to talk about the funky foods I ate and make jokes about how we use a dishwasher as a drying rack. Finally, being able to feel confident in my own skin and not having to worry about fitting in came as a huge relief. It was an enormous burden off of my shoulders. Looking back on this, I'm embarrassed to think that my culture was inferior to the one I was living in. In fact, I should have embraced it, not bury it deep within me. I am thankful for my parents for making me go to Japanese school for 9 years. I was able to maintain my identity no matter how much I hated it at the time, which provided me with a foundation of pride in who I am. Some kids are not as fortunate as me. They suppress their culture at a young age to fit in, and when they realize their mistake, it's too late. They have to live with the regret of not having their entire culture ingrained in them. I have met many people who wish they had continued to speak their native tongue and who regret not being able to communicate in their home country. It's no easy task growing up with a different ethnic background, but we can still fit in without having to sacrifice our culture. We can embrace our ethnicity and our surrounding culture at the same time. Thank you.
Megan Boover enjoys learning and helping other people learn. She loves to be challenged and to have opportunities to improve herself as a person. This past February, she was fortunate enough to win a bronze medal at the Canada Winter Games in Alberta. Megan Boover.
I believe that we never stop learning. From the day we are born, we continue to learn and develop as human beings. Imagine yourself as the tiny baby you once were. You have everything to learn in your life, everything ahead of you. Your brain is so new and pure. As we grow, we gain experiences. We learn to speak, tie our own shoes, and not hit others. We learn that we don't need to cry when someone doesn't share, and that the answer won't always be yes. When we get older, we go to school. School being what the majority of people associate with learning. We learn new material, but we also learn numerous life lessons. We discover that mom won't always make our lunches, and that nap time, unfortunately, does not exist. We further learn what is acceptable, what isn't, and how we are to behave. We learn how to deal with the stress and the pressure that comes along with wanting to succeed. The biggest part of my life I need to continue to work on is learning how to improve my self-belief. When I step on the ice with players who are better than me, my thoughts are, she is better than you. I am right about it, but by telling myself this, I have learned that I limit my chance of becoming as good of a hockey player as they are. I don't perform the same, and I don't have nearly as much fun playing. By changing the thought to, she is good, but so are you, I allow myself to compete at their level and be at my best. I have learned that the words we say to ourselves have the power to change the way we live our lives, the power to determine the outcome of whether we fail or whether we succeed. Once improved, this self-belief becomes a part of my everyday life, trying to tell myself the positive thoughts I need to be successful. Sports alone have taught me many things. My first year trying out for Team BC, I spent 8 months working towards the 5 seconds that would determine if I would be named to the team or not. 3 tryout camps later, I found myself sitting across from the table of coaches that would later bring BC to a bronze medal. He told me, "Unfortunately, we're going to have to let you go." Until this day, I never knew what it felt like to be told no for something this big. That night was tough, but I feel it is truly safe to say that sometimes being told no isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. I learned that no matter how hard you work for something or want it, it doesn't mean that it was meant for you or that you will get what you are after. Even in the parts of our lives that feel negative, we are able to learn to search for something good that can come from it. Imagine if we didn't learn anything, nothing at all. For me, that is nearly impossible to think. We all have had a moment in our lives that we learned something new, and we all continue to learn smaller things each day. Although I have only been alive for 17 short years, I have learned numerous lessons that I will bring into the next chapters of my life. If you have grandparents, you will know that they have loads of knowledge, years and years worth of experiences spent on earth. Even at their age, I don't believe that we will stop learning new things. No matter how large or small the lesson may be, I believe that we are always learning. Thank you.
After recent political events in the United States, Carrie Walker has been keen to share her own views. She was the Secretary General of this year's Shawnigan Mun and one of the leaders of this year's CASE conference. Carrie Walker.
The freedom of choice. In my opinion, this represents something that is much more fundamental than power. It represents the ability to choose your own course of action and pattern of living, subject to the requirement that you will not act and violate the freedom of choice of others. The Freedom of Choice Act, signed in 1964 by the 110th United States Congress, states that it is the policy of the United States that every woman has the fundamental right to choose to bear a child, terminate a pregnancy prior to fetal viability, or terminate a pregnancy after viability when necessary to protect her life or her health. Over the past few weeks, I have noticed how the freedom of choice has come into question in Alabama, as on May 15th, the Human Life Protection Act was signed. This bill is detrimental to the health and well-being of all people. Please now take a moment and close your eyes. Think about the future mother who has just endured a partial miscarriage and doctors refuse to remove the rest of the fetus, citing the new abortion laws that prohibit them from doing so. Think about a family whose daughter has been raped. They are forced to watch her suffer through 9 months of pregnancy because if illegally terminated at home, the person that performed the abortion will get more jail time than the rapist. Now, open your eyes. Look around you. 1 in 5 women experiences sexual assault. Think about all of the strong and powerful women in your life, your grandmother, mother, aunt, or sister. If they were in a position such as the ones I have described above, you would want them to have a choice, wouldn't you? You would not want them suffering at home, carrying a baby to full term, even if the fetus will be stillborn. And you most definitely would not want to watch the emotionally traumatizing 9 months of pregnancy she must endure. This pain will not only be felt by her, but just as equally by the supportive men in her life. I believe having the freedom of choice taken away from someone is pure torture. Although many people may not want to refer to it as a crisis, it is. I feel that it is a deprivation of the right to proper health care. It is estimated that over 520 sub-Saharan African women die for every 100,000 unsafe abortions. I think that it is crucial that we consider the evidence and facts and stand in solidarity. I believe in the power of equal representation, and it is crucial that both men and women are vocal. United, we must advocate for the protection of people's freedom to choose. By places such as Alabama advocating to ban abortion, states will start to take steps backwards, passing anti-abortion laws and creating an unhealthy and toxic environment for their societies to live in. When couples are denied the right to choose to access abortion, the fundamental rights and mental health and well-being of the family is undermined. After all, if a woman is denied the basic rights to make a choice for herself and her family, she will never be truly equal. This is why I believe in the freedom of choice.
Michaela Christensen was born in Prince George, BC, and has attended Shawnigan for 3 years. She has a younger brother and an older sister, both of whom have special needs. Michaela Christensen.
I believe in superheroes, but not the type with masks and capes that save the galaxy from evil forces. I believe in superheroes that some people would call disabled, handicapped, special needs, or on the spectrum labels, but not the labels I believe in. People with special needs demonstrate their superhuman-like powers every day, and who I believe are the real heroes of the world. Have you ever been to Disneyland or any theme park where their lines get so long it can take up to just 2 hours to get on one ride? Well, luckily, I haven't had to experience those long, grueling moments of staring at the back of the head of some random stranger until you feel for certain you really do know that person. With my superhero sister's hand in mine, she has the power to skip us to the very front of the line. A true lifesaver. Now, all joking aside, people with special needs really do see the world differently than others, and really do impact everyone they meet. They are able to find joy and happiness when disasters hit. They stand tall in the face of any trial or tribulation. And most importantly, they are inspirational examples and courage of bravery for everyone in the world. I, personally, have had the chance to experience these incredible powers firsthand, as both my sister and brother are superheroes of my life. My brother has type 1 diabetes, which is a disease where your pancreas stops producing insulin altogether. And so, he fights his battle with insulin and needles all the time. Those forces of evil, also known as needles, Carter can have up to 10 or more shots of insulin a day, and he's only 12 years old. However, he never gives up or complains about how he wishes he was someone else. He takes each needle like a champ, even though way before he was diagnosed, he was terrified of needles. The power of facing one's fears is definitely Carter's superpower. Although he may not know this, it makes me very proud to have such a strong little brother who can be braver than myself. My sister, I can't even begin to explain to you how this energetic, happy, giggly little girl has been a hero in my life. She has autism and observes the world in such a unique way that I wish I could see through her eyes. No matter what excruciating pain she's gone through with checkups and medications, she never stops smiling, even though her life is way more difficult and stressful than what the majority of us experience. She's always there to cheer up others, and nothing will lift my spirits more than a huge grin from my small hero. Fictional superheroes show us their great powers and sacrifices for others. But little do we realize, we don't need to search for someone with a superhuman ability like the ones in the movies. The real heroes are the ones that experience and see life differently, who inspire others to become just like themselves. I can only dream of possessing the bravery of Carter and the happiness of Mariah. I believe that real superheroes have been defined incorrectly. They don't, in fact, have disabilities, handicaps, special needs. They have gifts, superpower gifts. Thank you.
Lauren Nissen is a very shy person and an authorized introvert. If she speaks in class 9 times of 10, it's not of her own free will. Recently, however, she has come to realize that the kids who always talk in class are not necessarily the smartest, just the loudest. Lauren Nissen.
My grade 2 self, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and with the entire world at my fingertips, opened my report card to read this. Mathematics, excellent. Reading, excellent. Arts, excellent. Participation in class, needs improvement. These words, a 1 on a 3-point scale, came to define me, and they have ever since. Each and every report card I have ever received is guaranteed to read something along the lines of, Lauren is a quiet pleasure to have in the classroom. However, she needs to push herself to contribute more in class. These reports read like a broken record. And you know what? I am completely okay with it. So what I'm shy. I'm happy to sit in a class, fully engaged without saying a word. This does not mean that I'm not interested in your class. I'm absorbing all that I can without wasting time panicking, thinking about what I'm going to say in the 15-second window your peers allow you before titling you a try-hard or know-it-all. Sharing my rushed, unpolished opinion on a matter I've not yet considered in hopes of pleasing a teacher to get a higher effort grade does not seem like a good use of my time. When I was in Mexico City this summer, I was introduced to a boy who is just as shy as me. We said our typical shy hellos, and then I was introduced to him as Mueble. Now, for those of you who don't speak Spanish, Mueble translates directly to furniture. He was so quiet that his friends had literally labeled him as an inanimate object. And I have never affiliated more with a term in my life. The thing about Mueble, or as I later learned his actual name, Soto, is that he was still invited to every social event, even though had he not been there, it is likely no one would have noticed. He did not feel the need to be the life of the party, yet each and every one of his friends held a deep fondness for him. And when he did talk, he was absolutely hilarious, and his comments were often turned into lasting jokes among their group. Introverted is probably one of the first things people would say if they were to describe me. And I believe that, well, silence is bliss. And while it may be an extroverted world, that will never be me. And I believe that the quieter bunch also truly has something to contribute to this extremely talk-centered world. I'm incredibly observant. I won't miss much. I listen to everything, and I'm really good at it. And of course, I spend most of my time thinking, meaning if you ask me one-on-one about something that was said in class earlier that week, I will give you an answer much more meaningful than I could have given you had I been forced to participate. People ask me for advice because they know I've been paying attention. And finally, people trust me with their secrets because it's not like I'm about to talk anyways. Nearly 1/3 of the population identifies as being introverted, yet I'll still be seen as lame when I'm quiet rather than bouncing off the walls in the house. People think that I'm sad or sick or tired, but I can promise you that I am perfectly content in my own thoughts. And in fact, I need this to recharge. The extroverts of the world energize through socializing. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy going out. I'm not antisocial or a people hater, but for me, being in large groups is actually draining. A small group of friends or just one person will always be much more ideal than any party. There's also something so beautiful about a shared, comfortable silence, an enjoyment of one another's company that simply doesn't need words because you just know each other that well. The rest of my family leans much more towards extroversion on the spectrum. So much so that I have this theory that they talked so much when I was growing up that there was just no space for me to talk, and that's how I became who I am. Sure, I've improved in some things. I don't hide behind my mom anymore when introduced to someone new, even though I probably want to, but other than that, I remain happily quiet. In this world, complete and utter silence is so extremely rare. Before radios, television, and telephones, silence was much more common. People read, and they had time to ponder while being truly alone in their thoughts, finding out who they were without outside distractions. This is why I value and why I am completely comfortable with silence. It is simply peaceful.
Sage Brimacombe was born in the small town of Princeton, BC, and grew up in the Cowichan Valley. Sports and other extracurriculars have been a huge part of her journey, but the strongest pillar in her life has always been her family, who have loved and supported her unconditionally along the way. Sage Brimacombe.
When we think about family, the first idea that usually comes to mind is our parents, our siblings, and our relatives. If I were to ask you, what makes a family? 9 times out of 10, your response would likely include the following: parents, relatives, children, and blood. Now, if you were to ask me this same question, my response would include many of the same answers. But here's where it differs. Blood does not define family. Although the strands of DNA throughout our bodies biologically connect us to other people, the absence of those genetic ties do not necessarily restrict the relationships between people who have no blood relation at all. Let me tell you why. 17 years ago, I was born into the care of a woman who was unable to care for me. On a mild January morning in the dead of winter, I was adopted by the only 2 people I will ever know as mom and dad. I was chosen by a couple who could not have children of their own and was loved with every last piece of their hearts. If I chose to define family as those I share the same blood as, I would not have a family at all. As cliche as it may sound, my family is built on love. If we let biology define us as a family, the term would crumble around us in an instant. Oftentimes, we hear people favoring relationships to be maintained because they are family, usually blood-bound. I would argue that relationships that do not share that blood connection can be equally strong, if not stronger, than those relationships that are in fact by blood. Sometimes, tainted relationships engulfed in turmoil are encouraged to be maintained due to the bond you have with that person. I completely support working through the hard times because at the end of the day, life isn't always easy. However, I disagree with forcing an unhealthy relationship just because you share the same genetic material. When I was 4 years old, my family adopted my younger brother. Now, let me take a moment to reflect. 90% of me chooses to believe that if I was still in the care of my birth mother to this day, I would have been okay, though my life would have been unimaginably different. Unfortunately, for my brother, on the other hand, I cannot confidently say the same. If the Ministry of Children and Family had enforced the blood relationship and made him stay in the custody of his birth mother because she was his real mom, this would have been the agonizing reality. He would have been an infant, trapped under the supervision and responsibility of a heroin addict who was too preoccupied trying to get high to attend to her 14-month-old baby. Instead, the ministry recognized that despite the lack of blood connection, there was a family eagerly waiting to take him home and love him with every ounce of their heart. The meaning of family is malleable and can be anything you desire. This word that carries such a heavy significance can be crafted to anything you choose. So the one thing we should not do is place restrictions on something with endless possibilities. The blood connection, or in my case, lack thereof, does not make the bond between others any less meaningful. The people we choose to blossom around are usually those who can love and support us, people who can make us feel safe and who we feel we can trust wholeheartedly. The love that is intertwined between these bonds runs thicker than every last drop of blood inside of us. Genes are not what make us love each other. My family is not made up of the same fundamental genetics. We may not share that same crooked smile, and people may not always tell me, "Wow, you're the spitting image of your mother." But what they can tell me is how my mannerisms are uniquely like hers. My brother and I may have different cultural backgrounds, but below the surface, he is my brother nonetheless. Our individual biological makeup do not make us any less of a family. Thank you.
Enrique Ortega was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, and later moved to Celaya, his father's home city, where he studied from grade 1 through grade 9. When he was 15, Enrique began his journey at Shawnigan Lake School. He will pursue economics at university, hoping to one day lead his country toward a better future. Enrique Ortega.
I believe in Mexico. The image people around the world share about us, Mexicans, makes me wonder, what have we done wrong as a country in the past 30 years? Automatically, when meeting a Mexican, words such as gardener and narcos cross our minds. Maybe sometimes even mariachi, depending on the person. But I wonder, what if this was different? What about if the first words that came to one's mind after meeting a Mexican citizen were hard work, innovation, and achievement? I believe that Mexico has the potential to become one of the world's leading economies. However, I also believe that a great set of changes is needed. I believe in a violence-free Mexico, free from government corruption. Nevertheless, I believe that us, as Mexicans, have the obligation to work towards a better future. I believe in commitment. I believe that instead of blaming others for our shortcomings, we should commit to make an effort to overcome adversity and change your faith, because change starts within ourselves. But more importantly, I don't believe in shortcuts. I believe that Mexico's current situation is our fault for always wanting the easiest way out of our problems. For example, poverty. What is the easiest way to get money? Stealing, right? Indecent beings who hide behind the excuse, I steal because I am in need, do understand that what they're doing is wrong. However, they still choose to do so because they're just a bunch of lazy people that do not want to get up and chase a better future, working 8 hours a day. At the same time, I believe that problems Mexico faces on a daily basis are because we do not desire change hard enough in order to act upon it. For example, everyone says, it is the narcos' fault I can go out safe at night, or narco traffic is ruining Mexico. And yes, even though corruption is a cancer that has plagued Mexico's government, making criminals even more powerful than people of goodwill, it is us that give the narcos the power. If there is no consumer, there will be no supplier. Therefore, if we have enough self-control to stop consuming drugs in Mexico, the crime rate related to narco traffic will drastically decrease because they will have no one to sell their drugs to. Now, above all, I believe in the positive side of Mexico, on the hardworking families that fight the odds every day to make a living. I believe in the mom that wakes up every day at 6 in the morning to make some chilaquiles for breakfast. I believe on the father that works tirelessly to provide food, education, and happiness to his family, even though if this means sacrificing all of his free time. I believe that Mexicans, such as my fellow classmates, are the living proof that there are plenty of Mexicans out there with first world minds. I believe that in the near future, we will rise above the corrupt Mexican politicians who benefit from Mexico staying in the shadows of ignorance, and we will guide our country towards a better future, following the teachings and values we've learned on our time here at Shawnigan. Thank you.
Commended for her hard work and dedication to what's right, Crystal Dong has studied at Shawnigan Lake School for 4 years, which she chose because of the people. Today, she still loves the people at this school the best. Crystal is a proud member of Groves House and the grad class of 2019. Crystal Dong.
What is the farthest distance? The voyager said the farthest distance is when you can see the coast from the ocean, and at the same time, you can find your way back. For climbers, the farthest distance is from the peak of the mountain to its base, and the climbing path is always hard and challenging. When people face separation with family, they believe that the farthest distance is no more than the farewell of life and death. However, I believe that the farthest distance is the distance between souls, when a thick wall isolates the human heart. When I was young, I liked to be alone. I rarely helped others, and I would not ask for help from others. Even though I got help from them, I felt that I have to repay them, just like that. The belief of indifferences was deeply rooted into my mind and dominated my thoughts for many years. However, there was a smile that I encountered once that changed my belief, and it instantly moved my concerns away, like spouts of dust floating without trees. It was a day of heavy rain, a deluge. The river had submerged the concrete bridge that I walked across every day for 2 years straight. The rushing river ran through everything. Only the old drawbridge was hanging on both sides of it. It was made of two rows of slippery wood. Usually, I walked with both hands tightly grabbing the ropes to keep me balanced. But looking at the rushing river underneath that day, I hesitated. However, I was determined and picked up my bag and walked over the wooden drawbridge. For the first 10 meters, I was energetic and did not feel afraid. Gradually, though, the wood under my feet started shaking, as did my confidence. My legs began to lose strength, as if it was hard to support the weight of my body. I thought about moving back a little bit, but it was even harder to turn around. The flashing sound of running water made me almost desperate. Suddenly, the weight on my shoulder lightened and then disappeared. There was a big hand taking the handle away from my side. I slowly turned my head. It was a strange face with an adorned smile on it. Time didn't allow me to look at him carefully, but in that moment, his smile made me feel so warm and touched my soul. My bag and I arrived safely on the other side, and I turned to look at that smile again. Tanned skin. I was struck by the sincerity flashing in his tiny eyes, surrounded by wrinkles. No more words were needed, as his smile said everything. I had experienced the closest distance between people, not physically, but mentally. So, what is the farthest distance? The farthest distance could be the stranger seeing me and never helping me. It could be an inseparable diaphragm, an invisible line, a roof that avoids connecting love and compassion. What is the closest distance? The closest distance is the stranger's smile or help on a rainy day. Let's break the hard wall. Use both hands to warm others. Use the action to close the distance between each other and create a harmonious and friendly feeling between people. This I believe. Thank you.
We have 5 speakers left, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank you guys for the quality of your attention. I think that I could say this is probably our most successful This I Believe night so far, and while that has primarily to do with these people, you are holding them up. So thank you. Wendy Bryden grew up in Calgary, Alberta, and has attended Shawnigan for 2 years. In response to feeling a lot of pressure to succeed academically and athletically, she has experienced difficulties with anxiety. Wendy Bryden.
Nothing I do will ever be perfect. No matter how much I care, or how hard I try, or how much effort I put in, nothing I do or create will ever turn out perfectly. This isn't because I don't try hard enough, or because my actions are all inherently flawed, or because some god has a vendetta against me. Life is just imperfect. No matter how much I want to do something perfectly, it is never going to happen. There will always be something wrong, something that does not go to plan, something out of my control. I am capable of finding the smallest errors in the grand scheme of life. On some level, a part of me wants things to go wrong. Even if everything goes to plan, after, I'll notice something that I haven't even thought of before has changed. My anxieties get the better of me, and I'm suddenly trapped in a spiral of panic, faced with the realization that in my entire life, nothing will ever go right. It's impossible to exist in a constant state of distress. I can't be constantly concerned about ensuring the outcome of everything that I do. I had to accept that nothing would go right in order to be satisfied with my accomplishments. Learning how not to care was difficult. It meant going against everything my parents and teachers had been telling me for years. I had to realize that everyone around me was imperfect. It was easy to accept that I struggled to do things right. I lacked the self-confidence to even consider myself being better at anything than anyone else. But I idolized everyone around me, who I saw as being able to do no wrong, and that perception had to be destroyed. I had to realize that everyone made mistakes in order to accept my own. I remember when I realized my mom was imperfect. I was really young, maybe 7 or 8, and her friend offhandedly mentioned that she'd been a smoker until very recently. The idea of cigarettes being bad was one of the heavily repeated teachings of my childhood. My generation has grown up amongst a storm of anti-smoking PSAs, and here was my mom, my role model, breaking what I saw as one of her own cardinal rules. I was 7. I had no understanding of addiction or moral gray areas in general. I realized my dad wasn't perfect when I was 14. He was always the parent that I was the closest to, the one secretly in my corner while I fought with my mom. My dad never yelled at me, never showed any emotion. He was always the infuriatingly calm voice of reason in our house. He would let me scream at him about how he was ruining my life for hours and never shout back. But one day, he broke down in tears. He told me that he had no idea how to be a parent. I was his first kid, and there was no handbook. My dad wasn't the all-knowing adult that I thought he was. Life was just as bewildering and overwhelming for him as it was for me. But where he was able to accept his imperfections, I couldn't. No one I know is perfect. My best friend, whom my mom always said she wished I was as polite as, struggled to help her parents see that she was trying to be a good Catholic and a champion swimmer. My little brother, who I always saw as the better sibling, turned into just as much of an angry teenager as I did. My mom fights with her mom. Nothing I do is going to be perfect, but it's the same for everyone else, and that's okay. Trying hard enough is all I need. Thank you.
Jamie Bell was born and raised in the exotic town of Shawnigan Lake. She came to the school in grade 11 after attending Cowichan Secondary and is a proud member of Renfrew House. Jamie Bell.
Every day, we are faced with challenges. While some of the difficulties we face are rather modest, others seem gigantic and impossible to overcome. In the face of adversity, some turn to blinding positivity, while others operate on the opposite end of the spectrum in debilitating negativity. In my opinion, we need to function in the middle, between these two emotional extremes. I have been told many times that positivity alone is the key to success and happiness, but I disagree. I believe that being realistic is vital when facing challenges. While positivity is uplifting, having unrealistic expectations in an effort to hide your concerns is simply denial. Yes, of course being positive is important in order to be happy, but it is also important to have doubts and fear of the unknown from time to time. In our society, we are often shamed or looked down upon when we express feelings of negativity. We are often told to only be positive. However, when you choose to only make everything positive, it becomes toxic and failure becomes inevitable. When you don't take time to process and consider the reality of all outcomes equally, you're not being positive, however, setting yourself up for disappointment. I can remember a time when I was about to swim the most important race of my 9-year swimming career. In previous races, I had had unrealistic expectations for myself, telling myself that I would reach standards that were in hindsight improbable. This only contributed to my frustration when I ultimately did not achieve them. Learning to manage my expectations around logical, realistic outcomes, both positive and negative, is what led me to achieve my highest potential in this particular race. I no longer blinded myself with sunshine and rainbows, only to be disappointed when my dreams did not come true. Understanding the reality of both possibilities helped to keep me grounded and working for the outcome that I wanted. Over the past months, I have been through a challenging time in my life, experiencing a wild ride in a cycle of excitement and possibilities followed by pain and disappointment, again and again. Initially, I did not allow myself to consider the possibility that the pain and disappointment would last. I told myself that everything would be great and would resolve itself in no time, but this has not been the case. I wish now that I could go back and prepare myself for both outcomes instead of insisting that something out of my control had to resolve itself in a certain way. It is important to understand that in life, we are faced with challenges and uncertainties all the time. We cannot control a lot of these difficulties, but we can control the way we react in the face of them and how we can prepare ourselves for whatever gets thrown our way. We can tell ourselves that everything is great and perfect and hide our fears, or we can take a moment to acknowledge and accept both possible outcomes before we approach each challenge. It's important to learn to take the good with the bad and to embrace it, because after all, there is no rainbow without a little bit of rain. I believe that being realistic rather than masking your distress with toxic positivity helps us to appreciate the best moments in life and how to calmly and logically process the bad ones. Thank you.
Being born and raised in Jasper, Alberta, McKenna Ellis is an avid supporter of the outdoors. She is an equally enthusiastic supporter of bucket lists. Today, she will tell you why her own bucket list is at risk. McKenna Ellis.
I believe that I have a big bucket list, that there are a lot of things that I want to do. And I believe I won't finish it all before 2050. That 31 years is not long enough for me to do all the things I want to do. It's not long enough for me to live in Greece, to sail off to some unknown island and disappear for a few years. It's not long enough for me to learn how to fence and to speak another language or two. And I want to be able to grow old and have kids, and for my kids to have kids and to watch them grow old. And what about all the careers I want to pursue? Will I have time to get my PhD and become a pilot? Will I have time to become a humanitarian, to help people rebuild their homes after tragedies, and teach kids math and English? And there's bound to be things I add to that list, because that's just the stuff I want to do now. And it's okay if I don't finish it all, because many people don't finish their lists. Many people die before they get to. But not many people die because their world is at its end. For our generation, it has become a reality that our lives will be cut short because there are too many that favor money over the air we breathe. That the greenery they chase is not the one that will save us. If I am to die, I want cheers and laughter. I want sad and happy tears. I want to go in my sleep, peacefully and unaware. Or I want to give my life saving someone. Give them everything I can. Donate my hair, my skin, my eyes. Well, maybe not my eyes, but you get what I'm saying. I want to give them whatever they need so that they can have a better life. And I want to die knowing I did the best I could, knowing I have no regrets. But the more that time passes, my chances of these happening diminish, because we're all on the same ticking clock, every single one of us. It'll be the girl who liked my glasses, the guy who cut my hair that one time, my roommates, my mom, my dad, my brother. It'll be all the people I considered my heroes, all the people I considered my enemies. We'll all have the same fate. And all these titles we hold so dearly won't matter anymore, because soon we will all share the same one, deceased. Now, here's the thing about that. It won't be a big bang and we're all dead. It will start slow, with rising oceans and devastating floods. Tornadoes and hurricanes becoming more and more frequent. Insects, such as bees, will fall to extinction, making it nearly impossible to grow crops. The daily temperature will fluctuate uncontrollably. It will rise to unbearable heats and drop to frigid colds. All these factors will equal up to a body count of thousands, and millions more will feel the effects through poverty and their health. Now, the divide between developed and developing countries won't matter anymore, because this isn't something that can be stopped through thoughts and prayers. Mother Nature doesn't care about where you live, what you've done, who you pray to. She's been used and abused for thousands of years. She is sick. She will not hesitate to end the life of all the parasites on her back, if that's what it takes for her to begin again. She may never give birth to life again after the torture we've put her through. And we have nearly 12 years to save her before she's too far gone. And that's really tragic, because I really wanted to learn how to fence. Thank you.
Eva DeBay was born in the Republic of Georgia. She came to Shawnigan to pursue hockey while studying. She will speak about how the power of hope can guide us through hard times. Eva DeBay.
Hope is in all of us, however hard it may be to find at times. I've experienced firsthand how the power of hope can be a gateway to the light at the end of the tunnel, even in the darkest times. Sometimes giving up seems to be the easier option, but I believe the best opportunities present themselves through the toughest experiences. When I was a baby and still relied heavily on the decisions of others, little did I know that hope was at work in the hearts of 3 people on complete opposite sides of the world. These 3 people were involved in what would be the biggest decision impacting my future. I was a child born to a woman in Georgia in Eastern Europe. She had no means of providing for me, so she made the decision to put me up for adoption. A few years before this, over in Canada, a couple had just endured the agonizing pain of losing a child, whose champagne birthday would have been this June 22nd, the day we graduate. They realized after this ordeal they were no longer able to have children. After the long road they took in attempting to make peace with their emotions, they reached out to a local care center that still facilitated international adoptions. Following a long process, they took the plunge and flew halfway across the world to visit a child in a foster home. Turns out, that child was me, and those 2 people are now my adoptive parents. There were definitely days I wondered, especially in my younger years, why. It took a while for me to come to terms with the bigger picture, the realization that a lot of my friends looked like carbon copies of their moms, while my hair stuck out in all directions, wild and dark, while my mother's was thin and blonde. I'm lucky enough to have found some friends who are also adopted, one of which you've heard from today. And I found it very comforting to hear their experiences as well. I trust that one day I will be able to reconnect with my birth mom, to see where life has taken her, and to thank her for her belief in my future. A lot of people ask me if I was ever angry at her for getting rid of me, as they would put it. I try not to look at it that way. Personally, I have hope that it was just a selfless decision guided by her aspirations for me to have a better life. Although I will probably never find out the real reason why, I know it must have been quite a hard decision to give up her child for whatever reason she felt obliged to. However, if she hadn't, I would have never experienced the culture and security of Canada, and I definitely wouldn't have had the opportunity to step out on a sheet of ice with a hockey stick in my hand. Both my adoptive parents and my birth mom faced immense adversity through a tough experience which they managed to overcome. Personally, I faced my own challenges in deciding to attend a boarding school, wondering how it would make my parents feel if the one thing they fought for left them. If we hadn't faced this challenge as a family head on, I would have never had the opportunities or friendships that I do today, both of which stem from the community that is Shawnigan. Without the hope maintained by my birth mom in Tbilisi, Georgia, who took the leap to hand me over to a foster home, and the hope burning in my adoptive parents' hearts that one day they would be able to hold a baby in their arms once again, I would not be here today. My adoptive parents were the light at the end of my tunnel, and I was the light at the end of theirs. Hope is the driving force that has significantly enriched my life, and this I believe. Thank you.
Our last speaker, Kieran Breen, lives locally in the Shawnigan community. Although some may see him as a person who has lived a very fortunate life, Kieran's life has included many challenges. Kieran Breen.
In honor of Chloe Brigden, are we just insignificant pieces that surround the central picture of a puzzle, or a single musical note contributing to the song of the world? There are many ways to interpret the passing of a loved one from one world to the next. Pain, sorrow, grit, grief. Personally, I've been drowned by the weight of each and every one of these emotions along my journey through the world. Sometimes it can seem as if the sun has dropped out of the sky and that you are left alone and helpless in your attempt to combat the darkness. With the absence of the sun, the temperature drops and the coldness invades. However, unlike the darkness, their spirit lives on within us forever. Life does not simply end once the familiar shell no longer exists. The spirit of a friend, family member, or loved one will live on within us and the world. I developed this outlook from the countless hours I have spent utterly distraught about the passing of my two close friends and grandfather. I could not understand. Why them? What could I have done differently? Could I have stopped it? I felt guilty for something which I could not control, and it began to wither within me. It began to eat away at me, and for what? I came to a realization. Despite how much it hurt to say at the time, I could not have done anything to save them. It was fate, and I had to accept it. It took years until I finally came to believe a certain premise. Although my friends and grandfather may not physically be with me, they will always live on within me, just as Chloe will live on within all of us. However, it was not without the support of my friends and family that I was able to make sense of the chaos. It was only with them that I was able to make a choice. Rather than choose to bury my feelings deep within, allowing them to fester, I chose to live for them, embrace them into myself. And I do so by trying to embody their most exemplary qualities and remembering them the way they would want to be remembered. Not a day goes by that I don't think of them. I remember the times we spent laughing for hours about who knows what, the countless deep conversations, and sometimes just the way they made me feel. Thinking this way has given me strength when I've needed it most, living on for them the way they would have wanted. Life is short. You don't have time to take any moment for granted. And the truth is, you truly never know what tomorrow will have in store. So cherish the time you have with the ones you hold dear. Express your gratitude. Tell them you love them, because you never know when you'll get to say it next. However, if you have or ever happen to lose someone you love, always remember them for who they are. They live on within every ounce of our spiritual and physical beings, and will continue to inspire us, guide us, and protect us. For that is their dying wish, to watch us flourish into everything they knew we could be. Thank you.
That concludes our evening. Thank you so much for being such a generous audience. And one more round of applause for our speakers. Be free.